Thanks. Tēnā koutou katoa. Welcome everybody to the November Community Board, Te Awamutu Community Board meeting. Lovely to have everybody here tonight, and a big hello to all of those people that have tuned in for tonight's video feed of the board meeting. So first up, we've got apologies. So we do have a board member, Derbyshire, who's going to be late this evening. He's got some work business he needs to attend to. So can we please have someone move that the Te Awamutu Community Board accept the late apologies for board member Derbyshire. Cool, thank you, Jill. And someone to second, Lou. All in favour? Against? Carried. Okay, point 2, disclosure of members' interests. Based on tonight's agenda, do any of the board have any members' interests that they feel they need to disclose? No, okay, we will move on to late items. Now, to the best of my knowledge, we don't have any late items that have come up. If there's nothing else come from staff, no, we can move that as well. On to confirmation of minutes. So we will go to pages 9 to 13 of our agenda. And can I please have some...
Chair. Sorry, did you want to back up and do order of the meeting? Confirm the order of the meeting?
Oh, whoops, I missed that. Sorry, thank you very much. Sorry, yes, I did jump a step. So confirmation, I can't count. Confirmation of the order of the meeting, that will be as outlined in our agenda, that there's no changes. So can we please have someone move that the Te Awamutu Community Board confirms the order of tonight's meeting? Have a hand up, Jill and Richard. Thank you. Those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Righto, we haven't got anyone here for tonight's public forum, so hence I did jump that by mistake as well. So now pages 9 to 13, the confirmation of the minutes. So if we can have someone to move that the Community Board confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 12th of October 2021 as circulated with the agenda as a true and correct record of proceedings. Can I have someone to move that, please? Richard, someone to second. Lou, thank you. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Right, so I believe we've got Tony Quickfall here, Manager of the District Growth, to talk to us to the quarterly district growth report on pages 16 to 103. We will take this report as read. So without further ado, Tony, we'll hand over to you and we'll move all of the reports at the conclusion of the discussion. So thanks, Tony, and welcome to tonight's meeting.
Thank you for that, Madam Chair. So, as you said, take the report as read. I guess just some highlights to take you through. So since the report came out, we now have a new proposed bill from the central government, which you've probably heard a little bit about. That's the RMA Housing Enablement Bill. And it caught us by surprise. So what that bill proposes, it's not in the report, but I thought I'd just talk to it a little bit. So there was no previous consultation. It was a joint announcement by both Labor and the national government. And it's a proposed bill. It's likely to go through legislation, we think. And what they're talking about is an act towards the end of this year. What it proposes is what we're calling 3x3. So 3 houses up to 3 stories in all residential zones in all Tier 1 councils. Waipawa is a Tier 1 council, and so the way we read it, if the Act comes to pass, there will be a mandate where we have to update our district plan to allow 3 houses up to 3 stories on every residential zone without a land use consent and without a subdivision consent. So that's the basis of it, but there are some caveats. So there are restrictions around site coverage, impermeable surfaces. There are still some setbacks. There are still some height to boundary controls. They're fairly minimal. And I think it's fair to say across the country there's been quite a reaction from councils feeling that this is a one size fits all. which is probably appropriate for the larger metropolitan centres, but is probably not appropriate for smaller provincial towns. So we're putting a submission on that at the moment, and that'll be going to council for, I think it'll be going there this week or next week for approval. So that's just an ad lib verbal update. It's not on the report. What it means for the report is that a lot of our building and planning will, if that act comes to pass, will get a little bit busier. We've still got a little bit of time, 8 months before that comes into effect if it happens, and that'll be our gearing up time. So just in the report, what might be of interest, I suppose, is some of the planning and development that's happening in the Te Awamutu area. We've got a number of applications that are referenced in the report there around some of the growth cells that are coming on stream. We've got Plan Change 13, which is a decision's come out on that. So what that did is it made all the pre-2035 growth cells, including the ones in, well, any of them across the district, they became live zoned for residential. And so there's 2 appeals on that plan change, but those appeals don't affect the live zoning. So what that means is that in Te Awamutu particularly, but also parts of Kihikihi, Parongia, I think Ahapa might be covered by it. There's some pre-2035 growth cells which are now deemed to be residential zoned. Just reading through the report. I guess the ongoing story around our workloads is that we continue to be high and sustained. And there's quite a lot of pressures on the building team, the enforcement team, the planning team, in particular to respond to applications that are coming in. So the tap's still very widely open on applications coming through the doors. And I guess the staff are feeling there's quite a bit of pressure on teams. And on top of that, we've got some staff movements in a positive way, so some internal appointments that are going on. But it's meant that we're in a point in time where we're looking at some of the timeframes potentially being exceeded beyond what we would normally allow to happen. That's probably it in terms of just an overview, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Right, did I see someone's hand pop up? Richard?
Yes. Tony, thanks for the report. Is Waipa, has it always been a tier 1, or is it just dragged into Hamilton? And
yeah, good question. So
something for them.
So unfortunately, so this all comes back from the National Policy Statement on Urban Development, which came out 2019. And what it did is it talked about tier 1 councils, and then it talked about tier 1 urban environments. So Waipa is listed as a tier 1 council. It's actually listed in the NPS. So it's really clear to us that we're a tier 1 council, and that's reconfirmed in the bill that lists Waipa in there. Where the confusion arises is it then talks about tier 1 urban environments. Hamilton is called a tier 1 urban environment, and in parts of the bill it talks about the wider Hamilton area, and it talks about the greater Hamilton area. So there's 2 ways you can interpret it. You can either interpret it as meaning Hamilton City, the territorial boundary, or you can interpret it as the Hamilton wider metropolitan area, which includes Ngaruawahia, Cambridge, Te Awamutu, potentially even Morrinsville. Future Proof has made a decision that Waipa is we're a tier 1 council, but they made a decision that we're a tier 3 urban environment. We've sought clarification from the ministry officials, both Ministry of Housing and Urban Development and Ministry for the Environment, and the officials advice is this is now in the political process, so you need to put a submission in. So all the chief executives, certainly of the future-proof councils, and probably a lot of chief executives around the country are aligning submission points, and we're going back with a fairly strong request to clarify the urban environment component. Are we a tier 1 or tier 3? What that means is that if we are a tier 1 urban environment in Waipa, then there's some extra things we have to do over and above putting in these new planning rules.
Can Waipa accommodate that type of increase?
The short answer is Not at the moment. So all of the councils is, so what we're all looking at is we're saying this is opening the door for unplanned growth. And we don't know the size of that yet. And I'm talking to a developer, even the developers themselves, and this is a local developer who's active in our district in Auckland and the Bay of Plenty. Even he can't say, yeah, I'm going to be taking advantage of this, because it really comes down to site specifics and all the residential zones. So we can't even make a best guess. Is 20% of the residential zones going to be taking this advantage of, or what does it look like? So what that means is we haven't planned for this, and if we get this taken up by developers, then there's going to be quite a significant shift in the infrastructure demands. What they've put into the bill is we can use financial contributions. So in theory, we've got development contributions, which is planned growth and planned development. Financial contributions is for unplanned growth and development, and we do have the ability to recover those from developers. So there is a mechanism that they're proposing, but we just don't know the size of what that looks like. So that's one issue. And the other issue is around what might this look like? And if we get developers up and down the country taking advantage of this, if they are going to maximise the opportunity on each site, what does that mean for communities, the look and feel of them? Urban design isn't really featured in the bill. And so a strong part of our submission will be to ask for a lot better urban design outcomes than what the bill could lead to.
Thank you.
Has anyone else got anything that they would like to ask Tony? Joe, yep.
So Tony, any timeframes for any of the building at this stage?
So we understand that the government is looking at an act this before Christmas, is what they've indicated. Councils then have until August next year to notify the plan change. And on the date of notification, the new rules come into effect. Parallel to this, Waipara District Council has got a separate plan change, which we're calling Plan Change 21. So we anticipated under the National Planning Standard that we'd need to look at some intensification and look at increasing the housing supply somehow. So we've got a separate plan change that we got underway anyway. The timing of the bill aligns exactly almost with our plan change. So we're quite lucky in Waipara that we already had something programmed, which is pretty much the same as the programming in the bill. The only difference is the bill enables a lot more than what we thought we had planned. So in terms of timeframes, notification of either our plan change 21 or the bill plan change mid next year to August next year, and from that point it has legal effect.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
It's pretty close. Has anyone else got anything further to ask or comment on in regard to Tony's report? I did have a comment in a couple of things, Tony. One was, as a community board, you guys, councillors have already started their submission, so that's probably well on its way. But is there anything that we can do to be proactive to help support what council are wanting to do in this space?
Yeah, the submission period is really tight, and we've seen this a couple of times before with some government bills that they've pushed through. So we've got, I think, 3 weeks for submissions. I think they close on the 16th of November. So we're actively working on that at the moment. So I guess as a community board, if you've got anything that you particularly feel strongly enough that you'd like to put in the submission, we do have that opportunity still. So the best way to do that is probably just email it through you, Ange, or through to Kieran, and we can look at including that. I think what you'll probably come up with is probably the same as the councillors' feedback anyway, but it's always good to know if you've got any additional points that you'd like us to cover off.
Yeah, I've just got one comment from, like looking at it from a social housing perspective, if that's what some of these houses ended up being. And, like stacking people in isn't ideal from their perspective either, because a lot of these people have families and young kids, and they absolutely need green spaces and stuff to be able to play and where they can be safe. So, You know, I think that that's a really important part of the submission, that's taken into account, you know, that there is that space and for these kids to be safe, especially. And then, of course, not to mention all of the extra pressure it potentially could put on all our infrastructure around the sewage and water, etc., that we just thought that we'd, you know, future-proof for the next 50 years. And it turns out that it might not even be for 5 if this goes ahead. So, you know, certainly some concerns there. I had just a question in regard to growth, sales and housing levels of uptake. It says here that staff are progressing more agile and frequent monitoring of housing uptake, and it is intended the level of uptake will be reported in the next quarterly report. I just wondered what you meant when you say housing uptake. Are these people buying houses? What did you mean by that?
So that's a little project we've got going on for monitoring. And I'll describe uptake in a second. We're a little behind track on that one. So we were hoping to put it in this quarterly report. So just because we're building some new technology, we're a little bit behind. So what we mean by that is we get applications. Well, the district plan zones land for development, and a lot of that's greenfield. Then we get subdivision applications coming in. So we approve those generally. What that does is that creates title. Then people buy those titles. So where we miss the information that we can gather is between issuing the consents and then the sale of those properties. So we don't hold information around that. So a hypothetical scenario could be, you know, if we've got a greenfield that we issue a subdivision consent, say 200 lots. Conceivably, if the developer wants to land bank and maximise the return on those, they can sit on it. There are some timeframes around when a subdivision consent expires. So if it's not going to effect to, a subdivision consent does expire, but it's quite a loose test of what give effect to means. And so there is a little bit of anecdotal evidence that there are some developers who are holding land and either doing the consenting, then selling it for a profit margin, or holding and waiting for an increase. What that means for us is we've got plenty of zoned land for housing, but what we mean by uptake is it's not flowing through into houses for sale.
Okay.
And so we're looking at putting some, I guess, some more monitoring around that using some technology and some information we've got to see if we can get a better handle of what that looks like.
Oh, awesome. Thank you for clearing that. I was a bit curious how that worked.
That's a good question.
And then my last question, it was in regard to the local alcohol policy, which is due for review prior to June 2022. Now, as I'd been fairly involved in the application to put a off licence in down at the old Shell service station, there were some things in that local alcohol policy that I felt quite passionate about that needs changing to prevent us ending up in that situation again. And I just wondered around, again, from a community board perspective, what the process is for us to take part. I had touched base with Graham, and he said canvass the community, which yes, absolutely, we can help out with that. But is there a specific process to make sure that the things that we want to recommend in regard to those changes can be made in time for them to be considered before they actually have to become a submission?
So Carl Tuffy.
Hi, Graham.
Hi. Yeah. Sorry, Tony, can I jump in here?
Yeah, go for it.
Thank you, Chair. We haven't kicked off this project yet. I'm not quite certain exactly when we're likely to kick that off. It might be this side of Christmas. We've got some help come into the strategy team, so we might be able to make the first steps. But certainly in terms of when we do our initial engagement to find out what the issues are, everything, we will certainly be coming and talking to both the community boards and get your perspective on everything that's going on in the wards that you're representing.
Yeah, that would be awesome, Graham, because as I say, there were some things that really stood out in that that case where for the Shell service station, you know, especially around boundaries and what could be within a certain distance of the site. And if there were some things that would, you know, like we ended up being really lucky that we dodged a bullet with that one, because potentially, you know, we had daycares, schools, churches, everything right round that site, and the way that the wording was, it ended up being super lucky that because it's on a corner, that the new Presbyterian church will end up being in line of sight. But otherwise, if it had been sitting more, if it hadn't been on that funny angle, we wouldn't have snuck in with that option under the local alcohol policy. So it would be really good to be able to just make a comment, you know, well in advance, so it can be considered.
Yeah, I can't comment on that specific example because I don't know it, but it's 6 years since this policy was looked at, so it needs a good piece of engagement with the likes of yourselves and the wider community to really make sure we've got our thinking and our position up to date.
Yeah, no, look, that's super. Thank you for that. Right, has anyone else got anything further they wanted to ask Tony or Graham at all? No? Okay. All right. Thanks, Tony. Appreciate your time. And thanks, Graham, for clarifying to everyone around that alcohol policy, and the gambling one's coming up too, isn't it, next year? So
indeed, that is, yes. And that's in exactly the same place as the local alcohol policy in terms of when we actually kick that off, although that of course is only 3 years since the last one, but we just need to work out exactly what process and what timing and resources we've got for it.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Now we'll move on to, is Dave here?
No, he hasn't turned up, and I haven't heard from him. I have sent him a query, but Tony, unless you have anything to talk to for the Civil Defence Emergency Management or not?
No, I must admit I haven't actually read that in advance, but if there's any questions, I can perhaps coordinate those back to Dave if that helps.
Did anyone have any questions in regard to that report, or are we all happy with that and just take it as read? Yep. Okay. Look, you're off the hook, Tony. Right, Gary, I believe you are there. Yep. Hi, Gary. Welcome. So Gary is going to speak to the COVID-19 recovery quarterly report. So all yours, Gary.
Oh, thanks, Madam Chair. So look, again, can probably take a lot of this as read, and some of it's possibly a little bit out of date now as well. But yeah, certainly the recovery that we would have been reporting on a few months ago isn't what we're experiencing now with the Delta resurgence that we've had. Probably the key thing there is that there is still $258,000 of the recovery fund remaining. There's $141,000 allocated last year, and had a discussion with councillors last week around what they wanted to do with that $258,000 remaining. Whether they wanted us to continue with the grant scheme that we'd started, or look to something else in view of, I guess, some of the applications that we had received. It was difficult to make that connection with COVID recovery. So what they've asked us to do, and it'd be good if if Community Board had any further ideas as well around that I could take back to the councillors. Really what they'd like to do is to look at probably 3 or 4 key areas to see what we could support with the funding that's remaining. And the key areas they outlined were community safety, areas of business support, and you see Steve has already arranged some things in that area. Any assistance that we could give in terms of the vaccination campaign as well, potentially even some feel-good things when we finally get to the other side of this. Maybe thought about some of the thoughts are around maybe opening up the swimming baths for free, or some sort of, I guess, I'm not sure if celebration is the right thing, but just some sort of feel-good activities at the end of this. So that's kind of where the council is thinking is at the moment around the fund. So the only other thing probably worthy of commenting is on just in that social space that community advisors have been working with the DHB and have made some good inroads there. And DHB is certainly now utilising some of our networks and I guess trying to get a bit closer to the harder to reach people in terms of upping that vaccination rate. Yeah, I think probably the rest of it can stay as treat as read, if that's all right. So
Sorry, I had my little mouse on the wrong side. Jill.
Yeah, thank you. I think that sounds really good, the report. One thing I learnt today, I talked to a family who'd been in isolation who don't live far from me, and which I knew that over, if there are families in isolation and there's no one to do shopping for them, I thought, what do they do? And this lady told me her and her family, because it's not allowed to be divulged to anybody else who the family are, then the DHB actually got the groceries for them, and they were quite a big family. So, and the police have told me they're not even allowed to know who's in isolation, so they can't pass on to help families. So I think that, and that's fair enough, I guess, under the privacy, but I think the feel-good thing is just a fantastic idea. The pools are a great idea, and there might be something else, but I just think that's a fantastic idea. Yeah.
Thanks for that, Jill.
Thanks, Jill. Does anyone else have any, Richard?
Yeah, just it's very disappointing, and not having to go at you, Gary, but the information is not coming forward in a timely fashion. You know, I know who were the first recipients of COVID in this district and how they managed to get it and spread it, and their lack of cooperation. Surely this should be something that could be improved as in where the locations of interest were, because it was a week and there were only 2 locations of interest for X number of cases. It's something the health board and that I think they've got to front up, and Privacy Act doesn't work. COVID doesn't work by the Privacy Act. So yeah, nor should those people be able to hide on their activities and the location of where they are.
I think probably we might be going down a big rabbit hole there, Richard. So I'm not sure that Gary can help you much. I feel for what you're saying, but probably it's kind of out of council's control as well. I suppose it is what it is, and yeah, so we don't end up with people getting beaten up on both sides. I suppose that's why. So are there any other questions for Gary directly related to that COVID money? Sorry, Lou, see your hand up there.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. Firstly, thanks, Gary. Great invocation there. I think that we've all got to realise the fund is only a couple 100,000, which is not a lot. The big problem for me was always going to be the fact that we had a great infrastructure when we had the woohoo version of the virus last year, and we operated through local civil defence, and we were able to identify areas of need and want. What we've seen here is that the government has simply moved all that from civil defence and moved away from the professional people to people that are amateurs in a lot of ways to the implementation of these sort of things. And it worries me a lot that we are not getting the communication. We had the situation where Max Baxter released the fact that there were 2 COVID cases and was actually cut off. They're not allowed to get the information anymore. To me, this is incorrect. should be the communities themselves being made aware and being able to prepare. A person can actually be, as I say, infected or something, and they're not being told about it. We're not covering it. We only get the power, the source of truth at midday, and I notice they've stopped that now. But what I'm trying to say is that with this COVID recovery fund, I think we've got to identify little areas that are going to be. I know some of the food banks are short. There's this issue that we might have to deal with. I know one particular food bank is particularly short at the moment. So these are the sort of areas perhaps we should be looking at.
Excellent. And maybe we could follow up on that one later.
Yeah, certainly, Kerry.
Okay. Well, if there's nothing further, the other one, I haven't got a bright idea, Gary, but it would be nice to maybe be able to do something that supported our local businesses. I really feel like, they've been one of the hardest hit and probably the least supported. And I'm not quite sure what we can do, like people that have been short of kai and all of those sorts of things have, by and large been well supported. There's Kai for All, there's the food banks. There are places for them to go to reach out to. And so I think in that space, people have, the opportunity is there. I sometimes think getting people to know that it's there is a different issue. But my thing is I really feel that our businesses could do with a bit of love. And the other comment, I just would like to tautoko what Lou said in regard to government this time not letting council and the civil defence take as an active role as what we did last time, because I know people that have been on hold with MSD for hours just because of the backlog of people trying to get through and trying to get support. And to me, that's just daft when there are able, willing people on the ground that can go to the supermarket or scoot and get a prescription. So I'm not quite sure how we voice that. Maybe Community Board could do a letter directly to our local MP, to Barbara Courager, and say, look, we've got a really great team of people that want to get in and help and can do. Putting it all through social services is dumb, like MSD, because they can't, they're just swamped. So that's my penny's worth. But if there's nothing further, thank you very much, Gary. Thank you for your report. And
thanks, Madam Chair.
So we will move all of these reports. So can I please have someone move that we have received the report titled Quarterly District Growth of Wayne Allen, Group Manager, District Growth and Regulatory Services. B, the report titled Civil Defence Emergency Manager Quarterly Report of David Symes, Emergency Management Operations Manager. And C, the report titled COVID-19 Recovery Quarterly Report of Gary Knighton, Manager, Strategic Partnerships. So we've got a little hand to pop up somewhere. Oh, Joel, thank you. Someone to second that. Yeah, Lou, thank you. All in favour?
Aye.
Against?
Aye.
Carried. Okay. Righto, now we move on to pages 120 to 139. And we have Graham Pollard, Strategic Projects Driver, here to talk to us about the animal nuisance bylaw consultation. So we can take that as read, Graham, but if there's some specific things that you would like to point out, if you'd like to speak to that, and then we'll move your report once we've finished. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair, and good evening, everybody, again. Yeah, this is a new bylaw. It's a completely new bylaw. We're not replacing an existing one. And we open consultation this coming Friday, the 12th of November, and that will go through to close at 5 p.m. on December the 13th. I expect most of the consultation and the submissions will be online, but we are putting the paper copies, they'll be available through our customer support front counters and the libraries. Although I said this doesn't replace an existing bylaw, it does replace the current district plan rules about keeping bees in urban areas. Plan change 18 was about removing those in favour of a bylaw. So you could actually say the bylaw is Plan B, as it were. It also takes the district plan rules for keeping other animals, specifically pigs and poultry, and puts those into the bylaw as well, on the basis that if we're doing a bylaw for one, let's use the time to expand the scope. And what Tony's team will do in time is, when they get an appropriate opportunity, is to take those other animal keeping rules out of the district plan using a future plan change. We do have some basically general provisions that keeping bees, poultry, pigs and other animals must not cause a nuisance to neighbours or cause a public health problem. Now, when we say animals, we don't include dogs in this, because dogs are covered by their own bylaw and legislation. And we're not expecting this to be a bylaw that's going to be used to control cats. Some people do want a cat bylaw, but we don't think this is going to be the vehicle for that. There are some specific rules around the number of beehives allowed on certain sizes of properties and distances from property boundaries. And one of the things that we've learned is that fences and fence heights are apparently important for bees and how you keep those. So we've got rules in relation to hive positions in relation to fences. There are restrictions on the number of chickens allowed in urban areas. That's 5, and no roosters. No pigs allowed in residential zones, but they are allowed on large lot residential sections above a certain size. And the other point that councillor specifically wanted me to stress, so I've left it till last, is that this all applies to the keeping of animals in urban areas only. So those are the residential and large lot residential zones. So the keeping of pigs on farms or bees in the rural area, not going to be affected. Also chickens on farms as well, obviously. So this is a bylaw that's in relation to the keeping of those animals in urban areas. So 12th of November to the 13th of December, we're open for submissions. If the community board would like to add their voice to it, that's absolutely fine. Don't see it being particularly controversial, but you really don't know in these days. Thank you.
Right, so has anyone got any questions? Jill?
This is my opportunity to put one in personally about the pigeons.
Pigeons, yeah.
Pigeons, yeah. I've got 200 next to me and I have trouble with flies all year round. Yeah.
Okay.
So this would be my opportunity to have a go at that.
Well, that would probably be investigated as to whether it's causing a nuisance or a public health issue. What I can do is pass that on to Carl Tutty's team to see whether there's anything that they want to look at there, and if it's something that really could be covered by the bylaw. If you manage to find a loophole, as it were, then maybe that's something we can consider.
I actually said something to council a couple of years ago and they said there wasn't a bylaw, so they couldn't do anything. So if we do make a bylaw, then they'll be able to.
The opportunity. So
right.
let's see if we can investigate that and see how that stacks up against the proposed bylaw.
Thank you.
Lou?
Yeah, thanks, Graham. That was excellent. Just to back up what you just said to Barbara, was quite simply the fact that these can actually identify individual cases, okay, with the bylaw, but under the planned act or the planning, it wasn't able to. So you can actually look at each individual state, and if it's a nuisance, as I understand it, they can actually go and look at that. Your flies as a nuisance. Okay, yeah. and the defecation perhaps from the pigeons on your property, all of that can be viewed, as I understand it, as a nuisance. So that's where this Act becomes a lot more agile than what we had in place before. The big thing was that we had problems with our local beekeepers, who were actually, some of them on large lots in an urban area, that we had to have and apply for resource consent at the costs of that to have a couple of beehives down the back of their big section. And I think this just brings us into alignment with Hamilton and the other areas. So I'm very positive, and I'm very, very keen to see us actually ratify this for the adoption of this. Thank you.
Thanks, Lou. Has anyone else got anything further to comment on? No, I just have one little one, and that's, yet again, our submission seems to fall between our meetings. So it starts before we can move a motion to say we're going to complete a submission, and then it closes the day before our next meeting. So I'm not quite sure how we get around that one, but we'll find a way.
Madam
If
Chair,
I may.
we do have an opportunity to make a motion to submit to the animal nuisance bylaw.
We can do it tonight?
Yes.
Cool. As part of this report?
Yes.
Yep. Okay, thank you. And then the right place to do that is following this?
Yes, as part of this agenda item.
Yep, great. Okay, cool. Graham, you want something further there?
No, that's fine. Thanks. Karen's covered that off.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. All right. So just would we like to do a submission as a community board to support this bylaw? If I can just have a quick show of hands if we're supportive of it, and then we can just quickly put together a motion. Well, we'll get Joe on the job for the words and put together a motion that we move to support the bylaw. A submission to the support. Yeah, okay. Joe, can I just give you that little job to do for the moment while I move?
Just one moment, Madam Chair. We actually already have one prepared for you.
Oh, look, you did too. It's all highlighted even in bright yellow and that blind that I even didn't see it. Sorry. Okay, so first up, let's move that we receive the report draft animal nuisance bylaw of Graham Pollard, Strategic Projects Driver, and that the Te Awamutu Community Board submit to the Animal Nuisance Bylaw 2021 in support of the policy, with the final details of the submission to be approved by the chairperson. So if I can have someone to move that, that would be great. Jill, thank you. A seconder. Get Lou, thank you. All in favour? Against? Carried. Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. I didn't read it properly. Okay, so Graham, thank you very much. Good luck with your bylaw.
Right,
I think it's a great idea, and it's probably very timely because there's someone up the road from me with roosters. So I'll be able to do something about that now. So no, thank you.
Okay.
Christmas is coming.
Yeah. True.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Thank you for your support.
Thank you. We now move to page 140 of our agenda, which is the Te Awamutu and Cambridge skate parks update. So we've got, I think, Gina and Brad, I think, are both here to speak to that. I don't imagine you guys have managed to get a lot done thanks to lockdown happening right when wanting to talk to people, but take it away.
Oh, so frustrating. Kia ora koutou. Nice to see everybody. Yes, so just talking to my brief report. Obviously, we haven't had any opportunity to consult. But planning is still going ahead across the 4 sites. So there's still that, behind the scene work going on. So obviously these dates here have now been pushed out. We don't have any dates set in place at this point, just we're trying to work with Ants, our designer, just because we really think it's important that he's part of this process. So as soon as we can get a commitment for dates moving forward from him, then we'll reschedule those consultations. We mentioned last time there was a suggestion around sausage sizzles for these as part of this consultation. So we kind of went away and had a look at that and decided that it would be a cool idea to be able to offer a skateboard as a prize for anybody if that attended could go into the draw to win a skateboard. So, and I guess the thought process behind that was we really wanted to attract the people that could give us the relevant information with regard to design. So those kids and youth, the rangatahi, and right through to the adults who are using these parks can give us good constructive feedback. Our kaitiaki groups have been set up, so I've been in touch with them, and they're all pretty excited to be a part of the process. And even just today sent some texts out to say, hey, really sorry, we're going to have to postpone again, and sort of had 4 of them. It just came back and said, hey, it's full, we understand, it's definitely going to be worth the wait. So yeah, we are frustrated, I guess, like everybody else, but yeah, I think we'll get there and it'll be awesome. And yeah, so looking forward to that. But yeah, got any questions, throw them at me and I'll try and answer them.
Cool. Okay, thanks, Gina. And yeah, really feel your frustration there, because you guys have obviously been ticking along nicely, and yeah, just this hold up's a bit of a nuisance. But has anyone got any questions for Gina or for Brad in regard to the skate parks, Richard?
Yeah. Thanks for your report, Gina. Probably for both of you. There was talk, I think, originally when you came, I think it might have been last meeting or the meeting before, about potentially something happening at Prongia as well. Is that likely? Because I'm out at Prongia quite regularly, and the kids are having on Ballot Street, there's a drain that they have put a number of jumps in and dug out the side, and they go ripping up and landing on the footpath and out on the road and everything. And parents go down and support it, and then they whinge and moan because they haven't got anywhere to ride their bikes and skateboard and that. So
yeah, so their skate park is definitely obviously planned for Prongia, but initially the decision was to go with the Te Awamutu and the Cambridge site first, because there was obviously we had sites in place, so we were just rebuilding. But yeah, there's definitely consultations starting with Mana Whenua to try and identify sites within Prongia, and yeah, that's starting shortly.
Yeah, I just took what Gina is saying there. We because we've got those sites, we can roll Te Awamutu and Cambridge out quite quickly. With Prongia and Kiki, while we've got some interested parties, we want to go and make sure we get those sites right for these skate parks. And so before we go to the community, we want to make sure our iwi partners are comfortable with the sites that we're going to propose with the community. So that's our next step. So in the next month, or depending on how fast Christmas comes up upon us early next year, just to work with Mana Whenua around that. And then we'll take that to them. I think all the hype, I guess, for lack of a better word, around our skate parks taking off. That's creating that angst to get things started faster. Unfortunately, the funding doesn't come until year 2, and so we need to work with the constraints we do have there. But definitely to get into the community there and just flag to them that it is coming. I had heard of the Ballot Street issue. Well, it's great that kids are taking some initiative and getting out and about. It's obviously causing a few frustrations for a few members of the community as well. So yeah.
Okay, cool. Thanks,
Brad. Great, thank you for that.
Has anyone else got any questions from these guys? Well, Jill?
I just think you're both doing really well, Gina and Brad. In 2022, it will all happen. But everybody, I'm thinking the same thing too. But
definitely, one way or another.
I'm sure it will. But
Yeah.
good on you for. And I just think it's just important just to every so often do updates, for the community and the paper, just to say, look, this is what's going to be happening, and you're not forgotten. Yeah.
Yeah, great idea.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you.
No, thanks, guys. Appreciate all what you're doing there. I know there'll be lots of excited kids looking forward to that. And I actually thought the kids out at Prongia showed a bit of initiative using the drain to come up with their own skateboard parks. I know it's a bit naughty and but maybe while we're at level 3, we can just kind of go, oh, well, and we'll get back to a bit of normality once they go back to school or something, I'm not sure. But as long as they stay safe. So, okay, next on the agenda is our notice of motion from Gary, who I know had hoped to speak to this, and I thought he might have been here by now. So
Madam Chair, there's two things we need to do. First of all, we need to receive Gina's report.
Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. We didn't. Sorry. I'm not on having a good night tonight. So sorry about that. So can we please just move that the Te Awamutu Community Board receive the report titled Te Awamutu and Cambridge Skate Parks Update of Gina Scott. So I have someone to move that for me, please. Jill, thank you. Kane, everyone in favour? Against? Carried. Sorry about that. Righto, so we move on to the notice of motion, pages 141 to 142 from Gary.
Sorry.
As I was saying, we can't move that now.
No, at the moment, so according to the standard orders, notices of motion cannot proceed in absence of the mover unless moved by another member authorised to do so in writing by the mover. So I've quickly tried to contact Gary, but no response as yet. So
Okay.
Our recommendation is at the moment, just carry on with the rest of the agenda, and we'll see if we can come back to it if he can jump on board.
Okay, great.
Permission to get you somebody else.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for that. Okay, so we will jump on to the Treasury report, pages 143 to 145. So has anyone got any comments in regard to the Treasury report this time? Richard?
Yeah, where is the battery project at?
It's this far away. I've just had another hiccup with getting a picture of something, and that's kind of where I'm held up a bit at the moment, but I was hoping that tonight I could have come and said, yay, I've finally got there, but I just keep having things that I realise, oh, whoops, this would be a better way of doing it. So it's had a slight feature creep, but we're not too far away.
And last month we gave the Rotary Club some money towards a Christmas parade. Did I read it right where that's cancelled?
Yeah, I was getting to that. So
yeah. Do we need to put something in writing in the minutes to say that that's withheld, or because they can't have it and keep it for next year? Because
no, but part of their isn't part of their if they don't use it, it's to be returned. That's part of the Sally's nodding.
Yeah.
So if it hasn't gone out already, I presume we can just remind them of that and save us sending it out. But if it has already been allocated because they'd provided all the right documentation, then we just need to remind them that it needs to come back to us, seeing as they didn't end up using it. Oh, someone's got nice music playing. So is there anything else in regard to the report? Kieran, did you have any luck finding out from Bill about the pose?
No, not as yet.
Okay, all good. No problem there. Okay, if there's nothing further, can we please have someone to move that the Treasury report from the Te Awamutu Community Board of Naden Milne, financial accountant for the period ended 30th of September 2021 be received? Kane and Jill, all in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Right, okay, so we move to the chairperson's report on pages 146 to 149. Oh, excuse me. I had a couple of things here. So firstly, the Te Awamutu identity update pretty much says it all there. The only thing I just wanted to add to that was we were going to do the official confirmation of the actual working group, but we're just waiting to hear back from the Te Awamutu Chamber of Commerce around numbers and people who they want to have on it. So we'll look at having that on the agenda for the December meeting. There was a little...
Madam Chair, can I speak?
Yes, you most certainly may, Lou.
Yeah, thank you for that. I just received a submission from the Rose Society, and they were quite emphatic about retaining the name, and they've given me quite a lengthy thing here, but they just made it. We were world-renowned rose gardens, and they were established in the 60s, and they are maintained very well, but we do apparently have some roses in there that are of national and international significance, and they had a great breeder, a rose breeder called Sam McGreedy, who was actually named and put some of the world-renowned roses in that garden. So they think that the name is still appropriate, and perhaps this needs a refresh rather than a rename. So I thought I'd mention that because I've had that myself. So I just put it in for you. Okay.
I think I also want to stress that at this point, the idea behind where Shane's coming from and the idea of this is to talk about the identity of Te Awamutu and how we see ourselves. It's not about, is Rosetown the right name or the wrong name? We're wanting to dig a little bit deeper than that and say, what is it that we like about Te Awamutu? What is it that we, are the landmark features? So it's not saying anyone wants to just get rid of Rosetown. So I think, it's really important to stress that fact. It's just an opportunity to look at who are we and what do we relate to and how do we want to be seen going forward. So that's really good feedback from them, but it is bigger than that. The other bit I just wanted to quickly mention was Luke East had done some digging, and I hope we can just throw this in the mix because it's part of the information gathering. And he researched the old Te Awamutu Code of Arms. And there are 3 or 4 different ones which were quite interesting. And if anyone's interested, I'm happy to forward those to you. But I'd certainly like to be able to throw those in the mix when the time's right, because it's just part of our history, and it just adds to the information. Anyway, on to the lovely George Street car park. So this is something that I know Richard and Gary both have been very passionate about over the years, to try and get a walkway from McDonald's down into the car park, get some, better flowing in and around down there. And because we keep putting it in and sort of year we'll get to it, I was keen to bring it up again, and I know that there's money there for parking improvements, and Kieran kindly contacted Brian, and apparently there's even money specifically allocated to the George Street car park. So I was really keen to push this a little bit further, and hoping that Richard and Gary are of the same opinion, and would like to recommend that the Service Delivery Committee approve some marked walkways, and we look at getting those raised pedestrian crossings done for the toilets, so it's safe to get across there. So is there any discussion around those recommendations? Would you like them to be changed, added to, or modified in any way before I move those? Richard?
Yeah, I'd like them to actually go back and have a look at the initial motion, because they haven't done anything that was asked of them. They've come up with some stories as to why not, but and the too hard basket. But if they are considering safety, they need to have a footpath from the shops that are on the northern side of that car park to the toilets. Cannot expect, well, I don't know how nobody's been run over in that area. But that was something that we had said originally was needed, and it's just been ignored.
And that's why I really want to push it again and say, look, righto, let's get some action happening on this. We know there's money there. The fact, we've been bumped because there's no budget. So this time we know there's a bit of budget there. So let's have a go and see if we can't get something done. So yeah, I hear what you're saying. The other thing, while I remember, Jill, then I'll come to you, is that, of course, with the law change around parking, one of the issues getting a painted walkway or some sort of walkway from McDonald's down to the bottom car park there was around if Tony, who owns McDonald's, gave us a couple of car parks, he then wasn't meeting his requirements for the numbers of car parks. But of course, that's not going to be an issue anymore. So that might be something that we could revisit with Tony and maybe, you know, start progressing. But just as a point there. Jill, you wanted to say something?
No, thank you, Ange. No, I think it all looks great and it needs to be done very quickly. And just when they are putting in a crossing to go to the toilets, they need to change. It's been a passion of mine. I had just by the toilets there, if you're going towards Pizza Hut, where about 12 years ago, I got the council to paint a no entry so people couldn't go straight ahead. So it's worn off. It's worn off 4 times, and I've told the council and they've painted it again and it's worn off again. But people don't read it and they go straight ahead. But somehow that area needs to be, I'm not sure, somehow blocked off altogether, because otherwise it's going to be dangerous for pedestrians as well.
That might need to be taken into consideration. Okay, so is there any further comments around that? Richard, you don't happen to have the original motion at all then, seeing you preferred the original motion that we made? I mean, I couldn't remember, so I was just starting again, and I thought maybe if we put it into chunks, we're more likely to get something happening rather than doing the whole lot where we go, oh, it's all too hard and too complicated and it all stops. I mean, we've pretty much been saying the same thing. So
yeah,
we're happy.
Once upon a time, we used to get our recommendations and staff comments attached to our minutes, but those no longer happen.
Yeah, actually, I'm not quite sure what happened.
So it'll probably be about 3 years ago that they stopped, I'd say. So if we can look at some old minutes, the original one would be in there.
Okay. Well, so for the meantime, do we want to park this then and go back to the original motion, or is there someone happy to move this motion as it is and we can get something happening straight away?
I would like to see it go back to the original and see where we're at with that, because that's something that a couple of boards ago we put it forward. So if you're going to do one part of it, they'll ignore the other parts.
All right. So does everybody agree with Richard then? There's no support to get the George Street car park, get anything happening in there again? Kind of hard, guys. I need a bit of feedback here. It'd be
Madam
great
Chair, just quietly, I'm not aware of your original plan because it's a little bit before my time. All right. Would you be able to give us a copy of that? Because if you do locate it, and looking at the time frame, I would suggest that with Richard, I agree with one thing, is that we're probably at Christmas time, so it'll be difficult to implement immediately. So if we could just see it and then discuss it, with a knowledgeable manner rather than just, the first or second, because I'm not aware of it.
Yeah, no, that's what I would like to see happen. Thank you.
Well, does someone want to please find that motion? Sally?
If I can through the chair, I think what we should be doing is reporting this back to Brian, which I think we have done in terms of these questions. And I think there is an opportunity to bring out the previous report backs that have been done to the Te Awamutu Community Board around the George Street car park. And so we can bring that information back, and that will enable you to look forward in terms of the opportunities that transportation team has. So I suggest that we include this in something for Brian to report back to the community board on, if you'd like that further information.
Thank you, Sally.
Sorry. I just thought, sorry, Sally.
That's all right.
About to create kamikaze trying to get out the top window. Joys of things from home. I just wanted to point out, though, that it goes back quite a long way. That motion, I think, that Richard's probably talking to goes back prior to the stuff that Jing Ho did. Is that what you mean, Richard? Like right back?
Yeah, but that's how we can decide to make a decision if we are informed on what has happened and what has been put forward in the first place, to see whether or not we agree with it. If we don't agree with it, that's fine, but get the information and then we can make a decision.
Jill, you wanted to say something?
I'd like to say, if we haven't got the original one by the next meeting, we carry on and we do what we've got in front of us. And that's my
okay. So what we'll do is we'll just park this until the December meeting, and that gives Richard can have a look through and find some of the old stuff, and staff can help as well, seeing as we want to go back. So hopefully there's a copy not hopefully, there will be a copy somewhere of that original recommendation.
So through the chair, recognise that you are going to park this into the December meeting. Shall we as staff follow up with Transportation Manager and ask for a report back to the December meeting to enable you to make those decisions?
If there's any information that Brian could provide in relation to that, that would be very helpful, Sally. Thank you. Yes,
no
please.
problems. We'll note that.
Cool. Then the next point that I was making was in support of Alan Empson, who actually wrote and commented about the town entrance roundabout, particularly the Sloane Street one. I believe Sally's probably got a couple of comments to make in regard to this. And so actually I'll just let you explain, Sally, because I think you gave me a really good explanation the other day, and then we'll go from there.
Certainly, and thank you through the chair for being able to provide some background and some sort of future considerations around this. As you all know, and Jill definitely does know, we did remove the plants out of the islands entering into these two roundabouts and also the Sloane roundabout. We removed those plants following a health and safety assessment for the team to do works in these areas on the road. As they are part of State Highway, we do need a traffic management plan, and we also need traffic management to support works due to the narrowness of these islands. We have obviously maintained the main State Highway 3 roundabout plantings at Rogers Place, and the team do continue to maintain those. We have been in discussions with the transportation unit because the parks team maintain them, but the asset owners is the transportation unit of these sites. And so we've been in discussions with them around hard surfacing those, the islands entering the roundabouts and the Sloane roundabout, along with other traffic islands throughout the district, so both in Te Awamutu and Cambridge, purely because of their safety issues in terms of staff having to work in these spaces on the road. I note that within the chair's report, you know, an excuse of it being too dangerous, we have done a health and safety in terms of these locations, and it is dangerous for the team without that additional cost of traffic management. It is very different to the main streets where traffic does tend to travel slower through there, and different requirements versus a state highway requirements. So from that perspective, we have received some complaints, not only on these sites within Te Awamutu, but also in Cambridge. And the transportation unit are currently looking at what the options are available with their reduced budgets around doing hard surfacing works within these locations. While I appreciate doing some low maintenance plants within these sites would be desirable, unfortunately, weeds are still the strongest surviving aspect in these locations. So even planting will still require some maintenance works because weeds will still always grow through, unfortunately. Unfortunately, if we could have weeds as our natural plants, then it might be a different story, but it's not. So from that perspective, the Te Awamutu Parks team has gone through and done some initial works on the Awamutu roundabouts, just to tide over until the transportation team have the ability and the funding to do any other works in their space. The challenge that we have, and I understand that there are actual traffic management measures of another site within the Awamutu State Highway 3 roundabout at the moment. So we need to work with that existing traffic management to be able to go in there and remove all of the weeds. But I understand that they have gone through and done some works already based on the complaint that we've received. So while I do appreciate the concerns and the very much the complaint we received about this location, now that we're in alert level 3 with a lot more traffic, or level 3 step 2 with a lot more traffic around, we still need to get traffic management in to support any maintenance works in this space. So recognise it's not ideal in terms of what the chair is asking for and wanting on these sites. And I think it would be a good thing for, as part of that report back to December, is to also provide you an update on what the future works are happening in this space from a transportation perspective. So I'm happy to take that on board and report that back to you also in December as well. So thank you, Chair.
Sorry, I keep managing to have my mouse on the wrong side of my screen and then I can't unmute myself. Thanks, Sally, for that great explanation. I think Jill's waving, so she's got something she'd like to comment there.
Thank you, Sally. I know you've explained it to me quite a few times about traffic management, but what I found interesting was about 4 or 5 weeks ago is one of your parks people, I think it was, in Fluoro, was spraying, stood in the middle of those islands by Cambridge Road, sprayed around on the roadside, which killed the weeds, but didn't spray where he was standing. So I thought if he'd gone and sprayed all the way around, maybe he wasn't meant to be, he didn't spray in the middle. But now I notice the weeds inside there have been sprayed since then and they're starting to die. But yeah, I know it needs traffic management, but I've never seen the weeds so bad, but I guess it's just with all the lockdowns. And I'm sure when you report back in December, there'll be no weeds there at all.
So yes, through the chair, and that hasn't helped us, but we, I was in Awamutu a few weeks ago. At the same time, I think we received the complaint on these traffic islands, and I was also shocked at how high the weeds were. So that was the feedback that I also gave the team at the same time. I must admit, we're definitely having a spring flush still at the moment, even though we're in November, and I'm sure everybody is still experiencing their lawns growing pretty quickly, so the weeds go stronger than that. So
yeah.
Does anyone else have any questions for Sally around those roundabouts or any further comments?
The other thing that Alan said through you, Madam Chair, was about the wood chips, of course. They're a pretty tired sort of thing to put in a place like that. When we do the actual hard surfacing, are we looking at something like pavers or something up there, or something that, you know, a little bit of colour in it, rather than just a concrete dome? Just a question to Sally, if I could.
Yeah, so through the chair, the wood chip that's in there was only meant to be a temporary measure, which has gone on for a lot longer than temporary, if I can say that. And yes, I think the reason, the reason behind we need to ensure that these sites are not just glaring white concrete, that they do have some sort of design aspect to them. So that is part of the works, I think, for transportation in terms of budgets as well. So from that perspective, yes, it would be more of a designed feature, Councillor Liu, than it is just straight concrete, as I anticipate.
And through you, Madam Chair, would the Community Board actually have some ability to have some input into the design at all?
Through the chair, back to Councillor Liu, I can definitely pass that on in terms of that, so I can pass on that request.
That could be quite a cool thing to do, couldn't it? Come up with something that could, a design of some sort that could go there from the local community. I also just had a quick question, Sally. Would it be of any benefit for community board to do a letter to our local MP, to Barbara Courager, just pointing out the difficulties councils now face to maintain these spaces with the additional requirements that Transit have put, or Waka Kotahi have put in place. I mean, because this isn't something like we spoke about yesterday. This isn't just something that Te Awamutu face. It is something that faces many of our small towns that have, you know, their main street is the state highway. So, you know, like if we're facing this sort of thing, lots of places must have an absolute nightmare trying to do anything to their gardens in that way.
So if I can through the chair, definitely Waka Kotahi, we did initially look at seeking support for both of these roundabouts, but unfortunately through their budget prioritisation, it didn't fit within any of their budget opportunities. Traffic management plans are obviously required on these, on all roads, and there are requirements around works on state highways, etc. I would say that a lot of those rules coming in are based on health and safety measures to look after people working within the road environment. And unfortunately, there have been some significant accidents and loss of life in that space. So my personal feelings is that because of Health and Safety Act and ensuring our staff are safe, I don't know if there would be any leniency around what is required to get traffic management plans in our road corridor. So I'm not sure if that would and achieve an outcome, but yes, it's something that all councils and all, Jill and I have had many conversations around other roundabouts between here, Te Awamutu and Hamilton. So from that perspective, yes, other councils do experience the same challenges, but it is ensuring that traffic management plans and traffic management is part of these works. And unfortunately, it's for the smaller spaces, which are, you know, a metre or less, in terms of gardens, the gardens actually, the plants actually really struggle to survive. And so you'll see that other locations have actually moved out of putting plants in those smaller locations because of the environment is very hard for them to survive. And as you know, I love plants, I love colour, so I'm not necessarily the first person that would say that we would put hard surfacing in, but very much are aware that this still needs to be an attractive entrance and an attractive space in our town, so recognise that as well.
Okay, look, thank you. Just thought that maybe it could be worth a go. All right, so in light of that's going to become a hard surface, there's probably not much point recommending some plants put in there. But I would like to hope that something is going to be done about that sooner than later, so that our temporary bark isn't, you know, ongoing, because I'm not sure how long has it been like that now. It must be coming up 3 or 4 years, is it? It's been a long time.
Not quite. I haven't been here at council for that long, Chair, so not quite, but it does feel that long. But let me work with the transportation manager and come back to the December meeting with an update for you on timeframes.
Okay, let's leave that with that then. That sounds great. Okay, and then just clean forgot this last month that I suppose the highlight for community board from last month's representation review is that community boards are going to continue for the meantime, and staff have been directed to undertake a review to improve our role and function. So if there's anything that you guys as community board members can think of that you would like to see done differently, or ways that we can improve what we do, please feel free to let me know or let staff know, so we can make sure that those ideas are put forward. CCTV, there was a recommendation made on the 19th of October for the CCTV cameras to be upgraded. I did say that they were definitely being changed to PTZs, but sorry, I actually misquoted that, and the agreement at this point in time is for the cameras to be upgraded. It hasn't been confirmed that Alexandra Street will have PTZs. They're just looking into, with the assistance of some expert advice, what will be the best cameras to actually put there, but definitely improvements on the existing. And at last, we're going to see some cameras put up out at Kihikihi, and again, the same thing. Just wanted to mention that the annual presentation to council didn't happen in October like it was originally planned. Unfortunately, I had something else on. And a big thank you to the park staff, Sally and Brad, who's gone, but really appreciate the work that's been done down there and the good teamwork that's starting to happen between the War Memorial Park Committee and the staff working down there, getting the fountain going and things like that for Armistice Day. And while I'm just on that, best of luck, Lou, to you guys, to the RSA, for a good day. And sorry that we couldn't definitely have been out of level 3, but I'm sure you'll make a great effort and do a great job with what you've got. So yeah, best of luck for Thursday and Sunday. Have I got that right? Yep.
Yeah, that's correct. Madam Chair, we did discuss whether you wanted to have a wreath for just a wreath being laid for the community board. So,
yep. So just is everybody happy with that Lou organises us a cost-effective wreath to lay on behalf of the community board? Yep.
I'll just tie it in with the RSA. The point that I was going to raise is that we've discussed this as far as legal concerns, and we can have 25 on either side of the RSA, the monument, and we can have another group. So we can actually have 3 groups if we like, but as long as there's only the groups of 25, it's no difference than people having 25 and a picnic in the park. So we can actually do it because it's outside.
Great. Just wanted to double check with my governance crew, seeing as we're going to be spending a little bit of money, I presume we should move a motion. Yep. Lou, how much was it again for that wreath?
The sum total of $30.
Okay. So can I please just have, Richard, sorry.
Yeah, I'll move it.
Thank you. Someone to move that we spend $30 on a wreath. Jill to second that. All in favour? Against? Carried. That was easy.
It's gone from I should stand down from that notion.
Oh, that's all right. It's not a biggie. We'll let that one slip past. I'm sure no one will be too upset. Okay, so have we got any hang on. So those we're going to hold those off till December, and we're not going to worry about the plants because it's going to be upgraded to a hard surface. And the other weeds are being sorted anyway. So we now move on to board members' reports from meetings attended on behalf of the Te Awamutu Community Board.
Before you do that, would you like your report to be received, Madam Chair?
Oh gosh, I've done it again. Yes, please. So can I please have someone move that the Te Awamutu Community Board receive the chairperson's report of Angela Holt? Jill, thank you. Someone to second. Lou, thank you. All in favour? Against? Carried. Goodness me, I think I've managed to forget every single one tonight. At least I'm 100% on that. Right, so board members' reports from meetings attended. Lou, have you been somewhere? Lou's everywhere.
No, he's not.
Madam Chair, there's quite an interesting subject. On Monday, I attended the Urban Mobility Strategy meeting, and they were looking at how to design and coordinate and cooperate with urban mobility strategy. They were wondering how they were going to communicate with the local community, and my suggestion was that we use the infrastructure that we've already got, and that is that we use our community boards as a sounding board so that the community, we can actually use the sound, the local area, the policies that we're developing, and expand them to the community through the community board so that we can meet and relate these policies back to the community and receive their information back. And that was received very well by Brian Hudson and all the rest of the councillors. Because I think that the point that I'm raising here is that the community board is a very good area for a direct link to the public with all these policies. And the public are the people that are going to be impacted by these urban policies and transport policies. So I thought maybe I raise that with you and see what you all think about the idea and utilising it and perhaps having a little bit more development in that area.
Thanks, Councillor Lou. Has anyone got any comments around that? Richard?
Yeah, I think that's a very good opportunity for the board to be put forward and probably be able to help in that area, because we're a little more on the ground than the councillors. Not saying that the councillors don't know what's going on in town, but there are a few more of us, so the more info that we can gather, the better. I think it's a good opportunity for us to work with it.
Great, Jill.
Yeah, no, I just want to say thanks, Lou. That's a great idea.
I developed this with the idea that we already have the public forum and we could just expand that type of technology and let the public involve, with us in these things.
Perfect. Yeah.
Yep. No, sounds like a really good idea. Thanks, Lou. Has anyone else been in contact with anyone or been talking to any groups? Richard?
No, I haven't. But just on that, how do we go about formalising something then, if we want to go ahead with it?
At this point in time, we were in a development stage with the policies, all right, and I've proposed this, and we will go ahead. And then once we've get this in structure, we'll actually bring it to you as a community boards, both Cambridge and Te Awamutu, not just the one side, both sides, and then you can ratify the idea if you like it, and we'll operate from there.
Cool. Yep.
No, that sounds great, Lou. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. Jill, did you want to say something?
Yes, I do. Thank you. I haven't done, I've done a little bit of background work, but not much with the restrictions and lockdowns we've had. But you might have seen I wrote a letter to the editor last week in the Courier, and it just said that I am wanting to do something with the youth, and that will be next year when our lockdown, I'm sure, will be over or restricted, and just to let people know that there is something happening. And because of that letter I wrote, I've had quite a few emails of just quite a variety of different people just wanting to talk to me about different things in town. So I've been quite delighted with that.
Great.
And they've had ideas or things, and I've been able to put them on to the right people. I also wanted to let you know, and I don't know if anyone knows this yet, but the Presbyterian Church, who are dying to do their new building and just didn't have enough money, so they put a proposal they're going to sell a bit of their land for 30 car parks. So they sent me an email to tell me that, and I said, well, let me know how you're going. So they sent it to council yesterday to offer them the first right if they want to buy car parks. I think it was, they were letting me know because I said there weren't enough car parks in town and that I'd been trying to work with that for a while. And that they've got a bit of land there where there'll be 30 car parks. They're offering it to the council first to purchase, and if they don't, they'll do it to a private person, and with that money they'll be able to build their church.
Oh, great. No, that's thinking outside the square, isn't it? Good on them.
I guess they were getting desperate, but good on them.
Yep. No, good on them for coming up with an idea that's something they can do. No, cool. Thanks for that update. I did see you'd sent that through to me, but I hadn't quite finished reading it.
Right.
So, no, good on them. Is anyone else caught up with anybody? Lou and I caught up with Craig Smart and the Memorial Park group the other day, and we had a bit of a discussion there. I got called away for a phone call, so Lou, I might just hand back to you to cover the main part of that, and then I'll just add my little bit at the end.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, through you. We certainly had a very positive meeting, and the first thing is I totally agree with what your last statement was in your report, you know, about the grounds park and all the work that's been done in Memorial Park. It's certainly looking a lot better. But this was more to do with Grey Matter, who are being consulted over the construction of the bridge that will be in the middle, and we're just working on, they're actually thinking of looking at what was the Army Bridge and the Air Force Bridge. So they are going to construct them. They'll have panels, and we're going to consult with iwi what the panels are on the sides of the bridge, but they will put names actually on the bridges, taking them as Air Force, Navy and Army bridges. But we're looking at these bridges actually had a name already awarded to them. They were actually named. So the Navy bridge was called the Achilles, for example, and the Air Force bridge was called Contact, and the Army bridge was, of all things, called the Kiwi Bridge. So, because apparently all the soldiers in the Second World War from New Zealand were called Army guys, called Kiwi. So we're going to consult with that as the RSA, and we've developed a very, very good liaison with Craig Smart and Angela from the Community Board going forward. And I think that we're actually in a much, much more positive mode. On Sunday, and particularly on Thursday, they will have the fountain operating. And thanks to Sally and the team and everybody have let the volunteers do that. So that will be operating so people can walk through and see the actual Peace Fountain operating again for a short period anyway. So I think that was it. And if you have anything further, Ange?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, while we were down there, we went and we were having a little look at the kaipaka pā idea. And I know from a discussion we've had with Sally that, you know, council's got enough on their plate. So we bounced around the idea of approaching Transpower to see if they might be interested to do a social good project for the community, where they zhuzhed up that little space on the other side of the Mangapiko stream. So you would get into it by going across the Racecourse Road Bridge and around through the little bush part there and into the little open grassy area that sits down below the substation. We know already from Mark Dawson making an initial approach to, now I've forgotten the chap's name, Andy, at Transpower, that they are open to looking at working with us around what could be done in that space, because obviously it's too close to the stream for them to want to be building any electrical substation type things on it. So I just wondered, as an idea, would it be something that Community Board would support me just merely at this point emailing Andy and asking if it would be something that Transpower might like to do as a social good project on behalf for the Te Awamutu community, and create that little space and possibly call it kaipaka pā. Community Board could contribute by paying for some signage to tell the story about kaipaka pā, and maybe putting in a couple of picnic tables in there to have it as a nice little space that people can go and enjoy. And I just wondered what other people thought. I know the couple of people that we talked to, Craig and Mark, quite like the idea, but as I say, if it was something that was coming as a Community Board thing, obviously we need to talk about it here and decide whether there's any support for just asking if that might be something they'd be interested in doing. So anyone got any thoughts, Richard?
Yeah, Sally, is that a park that is maintained by the parks area at the moment, or is that going to be additional? So how does that fit in?
Sorry, Sally, can I just clarify, Richard? I just said it's not owned by council, it's owned by Transpower. So that is why we would be asking them if they would be prepared to put in a track and make it accessible for the public and help us pay to do that. You know, like they would pay to make sure it was, you know, safe, etc. And for them to allow public access to that space. So Transpower own it, council don't own it.
So
So
if I
Sally,
can, yeah, so if I can just through the chair, so there was a property off Racecourse Road that was for sale that the Te Awamutu War Memorial Park Maintenance Group suggested to council, along with others, that we may be interested in purchasing.
that's different.
Is that different? Are
It's
we
completely, yeah.
Okay.
So what you're talking about is on the other side of,
the others?
on the racecourse side of
Yeah.
I'm talking about, there's a tiny little pocket of land right by the bridge that if you're standing at the netball courts, you look across.
Yeah.
And it's like a little, well, it used to look like a little glade, but they've chopped down some of the trees between the substation and the stream. So now it's a bit more open, but apparently they are putting a whole lot of native plantings in there to replace the big, I think they were like sucker trees or something that were getting away and getting a bit, unruly. So yeah, this side, not
because you're on the
not
short foot at the back of the couch, but they'll be right. They'll be right.
Yeah.
not
So
the 20 acres.
if I can through the
Sorry.
chair, that whole area or that side is not owned by council, and council also weren't involved in the additional land purchase which would have given greater opportunity with mana whenua to look at, you know, opportunities on that side of the river. So from that perspective, Richard, there isn't, I suppose, a cost to council at the moment around maintenance, as it's not our land, as the chair has said. So if you wanted to support the notion, I suppose, in terms of what the chair is putting forward, then that would be about talking with a private landowner to be able to do something for public access, and hopefully in terms of talking to mana whenua and their aspirations as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yep. So yeah, it's just asking. I mean, they might say no, we don't want to do that, but it just tied in quite nicely. It has a lovely, just a really nice outlook of the confluence of the stream. I have actually bounced the idea off Bill Harris previously, and Bill kind of pricked his ears up and went, oh yeah, that sounds quite nice. But the big problem was, and I did bounce it off Sally, who I don't think objected, but she just said that council don't own it. So at this point, we've got enough to do, which I fully appreciate. We don't want to be trying to tackle something that we don't own by getting into a partnership situation. But if we could see if Transpower wanted to do it, like I say, as a social good project, and then they give access to the public to be able to use it, that would be different. But as I say, I kind of need support to ask in the first instance. So just, yeah, as I say, wondering what people thought, if it's something we could inquire about, or if you would prefer we didn't. Joe?
Have you thought about who would maintain it? So would it be the community board or Transpower once it's done?
No, Transpower. It would be part of Transpower. They would mow it and do that part of it. Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, because if there's park benches there, there'd probably be rubbish bins, and they'd empty the rubbish bins too.
I probably wouldn't be putting rubbish bins in there, because you would want to be encouraging people to take their rubbish away, not leave it there. But that, I mean, those are the sorts of things that we'd have to address with them. But I mean, I kind of don't think it's worth getting too caught up on the semantics if they're going to say no. We really just need to find out whether it'd be something we'd like to have a look at, asking them if they would be interested in doing it. So no one's got any comments. All right, so we'll move on. I did catch up with Dean Taylor. He's had some issues around seal up in his street, and I just thought this was quite an interesting one to share, in that the difference in the cost of doing seal chip versus asphalt, and it's something, it's phenomenal actually. I was blown away by the difference. So seal chip costs around about $8 million, as compared to asphalt for the same area is $35 million. So developers tend to put in the nice asphalt when they're doing their developments, but most of our residential streets will tend to have the seal chip because it's by far the cheaper option. But he also raised the issue that there needs to be some planting happen behind McNair Road, between McNair Road and the Thorncombe Park subdivision. And I understand that that's been addressed. So just we'll watch that to see what happens there. As Richard already mentioned, the Rotary Christmas Parade, Rotary decided to cancel that. So I was officially notified of that just last week. And then the other one that I had on my list was that in regard to it was just a further comment on the CCTVs. I watched the meeting, council meeting, and it was noted that the Te Awamutu Community Board wasn't included on the list of organisations involved with that. But I just wanted to clarify that we definitely are, and both Richard and I are involved in that CCTV committee from a community board perspective. For me, Te Awamutu Chamber of Commerce, and even as a community patroller as well. So just wanted to clarify that we definitely are involved there. So those were my things from meetings attended and people that had contacted me. So is there anything further from anyone? No, okay, we will move on to our next meeting. So our next meeting will be at 6 o'clock on Tuesday, the 14th of December. And otherwise, unfortunately, board member Derbyshire hasn't arrived. So I take it that his motion will just be held until the next meeting.
Yeah, unfortunately, I have not heard back from him. So at this moment, we let the motion lapse and we can bring it back to the next meeting if he wants to do so.
Okay, that's all good. We can do that. So we will close the meeting at 7:41.